During the Edo period, he was the deadliest executioner the land had ever known. With his own hands, he had taken the lives of hundreds, his demonic skill and cold ruthlessness striking fear into the hearts of all who crossed his path. A decade later, he swore never to kill again, transforming into a wandering Ronin. His face bore a cross-shaped scar, a reminder of his past, and his vow to never take another life. However, the new era he guards is a world that is even dirtier and more corrupt than the old era. In the turbulent final days of the shogunate, a notorious assassin known as Battosai, the manslayer, lurked in Kyoto, carrying out missions for the imperialists. In January 1868, the shogunate and the imperialists clashed in their final, decisive battle. Saito Hajime, the ruthless 3rd Squad captain of the Shinsengumi, cut through the chaos, searching for his sworn enemy. Amid the hellish battlefield, a lone figure moved with unmatched speed, his blade a blur. This man was none other than the legendary Battosai the Manslayer, who single-handedly turned the tide of the battle. Saito Hajime saw this, and a fighting spirit ignited in his eyes. But the imperialists' banners had already been raised, announcing the defeat of the shogun. The old era was over, yet Battosai's face showed no joy. He surveyed the sea of corpses, his heart filled with confusion and doubt. Refusing to accept defeat, Saito watched as Battosai planted his sword, the symbol of his identity, into the snow and vanished without a trace. 10 years later, Tokyo, in the 11th year of the Meiji era, Yamagata Aritomo, a high-ranking official in the new government, is delivering a passionate speech. He declared that the era of terror and violence had come to an end, and the nation had ushered in an age of happiness and tranquility. But beneath this fragile facade, a sinister plot was brewing. Kanryuu Takeda, a corrupt industrialist, was secretly developing a new drug capable of turning men into beasts. Dr. Megumi Takani, a physician forced to work for him, had just helped perfect the formula. Kanryuu, ever the opportunist, ordered the execution of every witness to secure his monopoly. Megumi watched in horror as her colleagues were slaughtered, but one managed to escape. Kanryuu dispatched his assassins, including a man impersonating Battosai the Manslayer, to hunt the fugitive down. Meanwhile, a red-haired wanderer with a cross-shaped scar arrived in the bustling streets of Tokyo. He was the real Battosai, now calling himself Kenshin Himura, a man who had vowed never to kill again. He was eating the food in his hand when he saw the police investigating a murder case. The deceased was an undercover policeman. Elimination of traitors was left at the scene. The murderer called himself Battosai the Manslayer. Saito Hajime knew instantly it was a fraud. The real Battosai never left such marks. Kenshin saw a notice bearing Battosai's portrait, claiming the man was a disciple of the Kamiya Kashin style. Just then, a girl wielding a wooden sword interrupted his thoughts. Her name was Kaoru Kamiya, and she mistook Kenshin for the imposter, tarnishing her dojo's reputation. Kaoru attacked without a word, but was easily neutralized by Kenshin. Kenshin told her that he was merely a wandering swordsman, not Battosai. To prove it, he drew his sword, a sakabato, a reverse blade sword designed never to take a life. Seeing the unusual weapon, Kaoru's suspicions faded. She told him that for the past 6 months, someone had been impersonating Battosai and the Kamiya Kashin style, committing murders in their name. Meanwhile, Saito Hajime, now a police officer, confronts Kanryuu Takeda. Suspecting Kanryuu's involvement in the death of an undercover cop, Saito demands answers about the purpose of Kanryuu's warehouse. Kanryuu, however, was smooth-talking, even going so far as to mock Saito Hajime for failing to keep up with the times. Inside Kanryuu's mansion, a group of disgraced samurai, men who lost their way in the Meiji era, now work as his enforcers, desperate for survival. After Saito leaves, Kanryuu learns that Megumi has escaped. He immediately dispatches his deadliest assassin, Jin, the man who had been impersonating Battosai. Megumi, who had escaped, took refuge at the police station and was being questioned by the police. Soon, Jin stormed into the police station. The officers were no match for him and were slaughtered in an instant. As Jin searches the streets for Megumi, he crosses paths with Kaoru. She angrily confronted him, demanding to know why he had stolen the name of Kamiya Kashin style to commit evil deeds. Kaoru's father advocated that a sword is used to revitalize people, yet Jin's actions trampled upon her father's beliefs. But her wooden practice sword is no match for Jin's blade, and she's quickly overpowered. Just as Jin is about to strike the final blow, Kenshin appears, saving her at the last second. Recognizing the distinctive cross-shaped scar on Kenshin's face, Jin realizes this is the legendary Battosai. Jin's Shin no Ippu had no effect on the mentally fortified Kenshin, who swiftly evacuated with Kaoru. Kenshin's appearance thrilled Jin immensely. At this moment, Kaoru brought Kenshin back to the dojo. Kenshin curiously surveyed his surroundings and thus learned of Kaoru's identity. Kaoru told Kenshin that the commotion caused by Battosai had left the once bustling dojo completely deserted. Kenshin urged her to abandon her fight against Jin, for Jin was far more powerful than she was, but Kaoru could not accept it. She refused to let the sword art her father championed be tarnished by a murderous blade. Kenshin, moved by her conviction, leaves without another word. The police station was littered with bodies, and the sheriff stared at the scene before him in fury. The next day, a group of thugs arrived at Kamiya Dojo. Acting on someone's orders, they intended to forcibly acquire the land. They mocked Kamiya Kashin style as the Executioner's Dojo and proceeded to smash things up. Yahiko Myojin, the dojo's lone student, bravely stands up to them, only to be easily subdued. Just as Kaoru's hope fades, Kenshin returns. He admitted that swords were deadly weapons and swordsmanship a killing art, facts that could not be glossed over. But he shifted his tone, saying he preferred the innocent words spoken by Kaoru. Afterwards, Kenshin single-handedly beat all the gangsters to a pulp with his reverse blade sword. He revealed the legendary heightened Mitsurugi style, the very swordsmanship of Battosai the Manslayer. Yet, because Kenshin wielded a reverse blade sword, no one died. They merely fell unconscious. The commotion at the dojo drew the police, and Kenshin was arrested on the spot. Before leaving, Kaoru asked for his name.
Himura Kenshin de gozaru.
In his cell, Kenshin came face to face with Saito Hajime once more. It turned out that after the war, Saito had taken a new identity and joined the government as a police officer. Saito brought Kenshin before Yamagata Aritomo. the same superior who had once assigned Kenshin his missions. Saito Hajime informed Kenshin about the dangers of the new type of medicine, and they hoped Kenshin would continue to serve the government. Kenshin flatly refused. Saito drew his sword, attempting to force compliance through brute strength. He mocked Kenshin's reverse blade sword as a joke, arguing that a killer couldn't protect others without taking lives. Kenshin stood firm, insisting that even with this blade, he could safeguard everyone within his sight. Ten years later, the two faced off once more. Saito Hajime's every strike was lethal, showing no mercy. Meanwhile, Kenshin found himself constantly at a disadvantage, with the reverse blade sword completely outmatched in the duel. Yamagata promptly halted the duel and ultimately let Kenshin go. Kaoru had been waiting outside the police station. Seeing Kenshin with nowhere to go, she invited him to stay at her dojo.
助けてくれたか
分かったでござろう。拙者が人斬りだった。
そんなの知らないわ。私が出会ったのは謙信っていうルローニよ。
Kenshin confessed his past as an executioner, but Kaoru said she didn't care at all. Meanwhile, Megumi, still fleeing from Jin, accidentally collided with Yahiko Myojin. Desperate, she begged for his help, explaining she was being hunted. When Kenshin and Kaoru returned, they found Yahiko had brought Megumi back with him. And so, 4 individuals from vastly different backgrounds came to live together at the dojo. Kaoru presented Kenshin with a set of clothes her father had worn in his youth. The vibrant red fabric seemed to symbolize Kenshin's departure from his shadowed past and the dawn of a new life. To celebrate, they all went out for hot pot. At the table, Kaoru was curious about Megumi's background, but Megumi kept her secrets. The fleeting warmth, however, was short-lived. Kanryuu Takeda arrived in person, having heard of Kenshin's heroic feat of single-handedly defeating a gang. He offered Kenshin a fortune to work as his bodyguard. Kenshin refused without hesitation. Enraged, Kanryuu launched into a tirade, declaring that in the money-driven Meiji era, a samurai's pride was worthless. Just then, a man stepped forward, Sanosuke Sagara, a recently released thug. He had heard the legends of Battosai and challenged Kenshin on the spot, declaring that if he won, Kanryuu would hire him instead. Sanosuke wielded a massive horse-slaying sword, its blade dulled but still devastating as a blunt weapon. However, Kenshin had no intention whatsoever of fighting him. He believed Sanosuke wasn't worth selling his skills for someone like Kanryuu. After hearing Kenshin's words, Sanosuke glanced at Kanryuu across the room and suddenly found the whole thing tedious. The farce ultimately came to nothing. Kanryuu watched Kenshin depart, warning his men not to provoke Jin, who was impersonating Battosai. And at that moment, the real slaughter was unfolding. Jin attacked again, killing the thugs who had attacked the dojo before and the police who rushed to the scene after hearing the news. The next day, Saito arrived to survey the carnage. He stood over the bodies, deep in thought. Kenshin and the others soon arrived as well. Kenshin remarked that once you take a life, there's no turning back. That was the fate of a killer. Saito scoffed at Kenshin's reverse blade sword, arguing that if Kenshin had killed those thugs himself, the police wouldn't have died in vain. The vow of non-killing and the cruel reality once again confronted Kenshin. The executioner's fate seems inescapable. At that moment, Kenshin suddenly recalled what had happened 14 years ago. He had been the most feared assassin of the Edo period, known as Battosai. His sword existed for slaughter, leaving a trail of bodies in its wake. For the sake of peace in the new era, he accepted a mission to assassinate a group of targets. Among them was a man about to be married. Clutching his sword, the man pleaded desperately, saying he couldn't die. There was someone important waiting for him. With his last ounce of strength, he struck at Kenshin, leaving a scar on his face. The next day, Kenshin stood in the crowd, watching from a distance. Doubt crept into his mind. He began to question whether everything he had done was truly right. With the dawn of the new era, he traded his killing blade for a reverse blade sword. Battosai vanished, and in his place was a wandering Ronin named Kenshin Himura. He drifted from place to place until he met Kaoru Kamiya. Her kindness and purity were like a ray of sunlight piercing the darkness that had enveloped his world. For the first time, he found something resembling a home, yet beneath the surface of peace, a new evil was taking root. Kanryuu Takeda was plotting a conspiracy that could overturn all of Japan. He planned to transform the area around Kamiya Dojo into a port, then ship the newly developed medicine to every corner of Japan. With this drug, he intended to control the world and build his own empire of wealth, using the profits to buy weapons. And the one who could help him carry out this evil plan was none other than Megumi Takani. At that moment, a mysterious figure suddenly appeared before Megumi.
Megumi, こんなところにいたとはな。仲間だからな。教えてやる。気をつけろ。
Inside the dojo, a rare moment of warmth was unfolding. For Kenshin, this was the new era he had longed for, a happiness he could protect without drawing his sword. But the peace was shattered by desperate cries for help. Kanryuu had begun his assault on the land, poisoning the well water to drive the villagers away. One by one, the innocent residents collapsed, their lives hanging by a thread. Just as everyone was at a loss, Megumi stepped forward. With her exceptional medical skills, she directed the rescue efforts, assigning tasks to save the poisoned villagers. She instructed Kaoru to rush to a neighboring village to find a traditional doctor and gather herbs according to her prescription. Through their relentless efforts, the villagers were saved. A doctor who had assisted revealed Megumi's true identity. The Takani family, he explained, was a prestigious lineage of physicians, but during the war, the entire family had perished while serving in the military. Megumi, who had lost everyone, was forced to create the new type of drug for Kanryuu to survive. Witnessing the tragedy she had unwittingly caused, Megumi was consumed by guilt and remorse. By the river, she and Kenshin confessed the sins they carried. The cross-shaped scar on Kenshin's face, one from the warrior he killed, the other from the warrior's fiancé, was a bloody, hateful brand, a permanent reminder of his past crimes. Deeply moved, Megumi decided to stop running. She would atone in her own way. Leaving behind a farewell letter, she returned alone to Kanryuu's mansion. When Kenshin learned of this, he immediately set out to rescue her. Sanosuke, without hesitation, insisted on joining him. Kenshin entrusted the safety of Kaoru and the dojo to the young Yahiko Myojin, then stepped onto the battlefield, where death lurked at every turn. Kanryuu wasn't surprised by Megumi's return. He knew she had nowhere else to go. She would always come back. But Megumi made it clear. She wasn't there to help him. She had returned to end everything. Unfortunately, she was just a woman, and Kanryuu was surrounded by enforcers. Her assassination attempt failed, and she found herself trapped in an even deeper crisis. Just then, the sound of battle erupted outside. Kenshin, like a crimson bolt of lightning, tore through the crowd with his reverse blade sword. He struck without killing, yet no one could withstand his blade. Meanwhile, Sanosuke wielded his massive horse-slaying sword, sending enemies flying. From upstairs, Kanryuu watched his men fall one by one, still shouting about the power of money. He couldn't comprehend why anyone would risk their life for something other than profit. Kenshin and Sanosuke fought their way upstairs, each facing one of Kanryuu's top fighters. Sanosuke's opponent was a tough guy who also revered martial arts, and the two engaged in a fierce hand-to-hand battle. All the objects around them became props for their battle. Kenshin's adversary was a masked figure. The man taunted Kenshin, asking why he would risk his life for a woman who didn't deserve it. Kenshin dodged bullets, waiting for his chance to close in. Though he wielded a reverse blade sword, his skill was undiminished. With masterful swordsmanship, Kenshin defeated his opponent, upholding his vow never to kill. Sanosuke had also finished his fight and joined up with Kenshin. Together, they reached a door. The room was in utter disarray, leaving Kenshin and Sanosuke scrambling to dodge the chaos. At this moment, Saito Hajime arrived in time. It turned out that Yahiko ran to the police station to call the police. After the three had devised a plan, Sanosuke stepped forward to draw Kanryuu's attention. Kanryuu gloated triumphantly, demanding the two lay down their weapons and surrender. Taking advantage of the blind spot where the machine gun was turned, Saito Hajime rushed towards Kanryuu. In moments, Kanryuu was subdued. Sanosuke moved to kill Kanryuu, but Saito stopped him. Kenshin rescued Megumi, thinking the ordeal was over, but danger still loomed. Jin, Kanryuu's other assassin, had kidnapped Kaoru. His goal was simple: force Kenshin to become the ruthless Battosai once more. Watching Kaoru being carried away, an unprecedented fury ignited in Kenshin's eyes. He and Jin clashed in a bamboo forest, Jin's swordplay vicious and deadly. Worse, Jin used his cursed technique, Shin no Ippu, to paralyze Kaoru's lungs, leaving her on the brink of death. The only way to break the curse was to kill the caster. This was a cruel choice. On one side lay Kaoru's life, on the other, the vow of non-killing he had sworn. To save Kaoru, the killing intent he had long suppressed erupted. He became Battosai once more. With the ultimate technique of the Hiten Mitsurugi style, Su Ryu Sen, he crippled Jin's right hand in an instant. Just as Kenshin raised his sword to deliver the final blow, a miracle happened. Kaoru, with sheer willpower, broke free of the curse herself. She told Kenshin that one can save lives without killing others, and this is the new world he longs for. Kaoru's words struck Kenshin like a bell, snapping him back to clarity. The killing intent faded from his eyes. Jin, his faith shattered, chose to end his own life. Kenshin carried the unconscious Kaoru home, his reverse blade sword a symbol of breaking the cycle of killing, not an excuse to avoid it. When Kaoru awoke, Kenshin was gone. She feared he had chosen to wander alone again.
Kenshin!
Rushing outside, she found him, standing in the morning light, basket in hand, smiling. Kenshin didn't leave. He found his home. Kaoru smiled through her tears and spoke the words Kenshin had longed to hear. Kenshin also let out a relieved smile.
ただいまでござる。